What is fear? We know it's scary, unhealthy, and protects us from imminent harm. But do we understand the amazing capability of music, which can help prevent and heal fear? We can better understand the almost magical effect music has to heal us against fear and other threats to our spiritual, mental, and physical well-being. The positive impact of music on our wellness is limitless. Journey with me to better appreciate music's role in our lives since the universe began. We honor America's 250th birthday with a celebration of the Earth's history and healing power of music. Over 100 million people of 200 cultures migrated to America and brought their love of music with them. They created America's music diversity by breaking boundaries and collaborating. Seemingly unrelated instruments and vocals have made beautiful music together. They continue to remind us that America is a unified rhythm of the continuing love affair with the healing power of music. The earliest human music was vocalizing call and response in time of need, mothers soothing their babies, and mating calls. The origins of rational speech, along with the emotional and spiritual symbols of music, formed a unique dance. Eventually, each moved in a different direction of intent and ritual. Language has explained complicated data and assisted verbal communication. Music has embodied profound healing and brought people together in unspoken yet powerful ways. Both have been life companions, with music too often taking a back seat to spoken and written language. Scientists are studying music's healing potential, while composers and musicians continue to thrill, calm, and heal us. In the wake of it all, we know a world without music is unthinkable. Life is music. Music is everywhere. Music is our healer. We become one with music. We come alive with music. Music is in our DNA. Music saves lives. We play music for our loved ones to ease their passing. Since the beginning of time, communication skills have been shape-shifting, allowing new ways to share our stories. From grunting and gesturing around campfires to present-day social media, we delight in sharing who we are from everywhere on Earth. Music continues its life-affirming role as the incandescent soundtrack of our lives. Its diversity embodies the essence of its profound healing potential. Countless composers, musicians, academics, and scientists are sharing music's role in our lives and searching for new information about its amazing healing potential. It's a never-ending journey of discovery, joy, and passion, where the notes we compose, play, and sing. Our muscles hear music, and we become the rhythms which inspire us to dance. Our resonant voices are humanity. Music embodies the memories of who we are while we live far away from our ancestral homelands and families. Music heals the wounds of the broken lands and homes left behind and reminds us of our joy and passion for living. Music eases the pain of loss within history's violence. We're driven to create unique forms of music which personify our evolving spirits and cultures. Rhythm, melody, harmony, and tempo stimulate cognitive, emotional, and physical response and lift mood, ease pain, lower stress, and improve blood flow. Music is often a wake-up call to move into our future. Music speaks to us in unknown universal ways and has the power to silence us as we navigate our inner selves. Music frames our experiences, perceptions, and feelings, allowing us to shape how we present ourselves. Music resurrects memories of our stories by stimulating more parts of the brain than any other human function. Music strengthens and transforms our collective identity. It provides a safe place to accomplish something unique together. Many unborn melodies yearn to be heard with the potential to heal humanity. Without music, we risk destroying who we are and the very fabric of our being.
My family is not a typical family. My mother is black, my father's white. That's common enough, but when they got married in the 50s, it was relatively uncommon. Both of my parents are artists. When they met, my father had a ceramics shop in Lower Manhattan, and my mother was writing poetry. And she came into the shop looking for my father's business partner, who wasn't there. My father was the only one in the store. She asked if she could wait for Jay, his partner. My father said, sure. So my mom waited. My father didn't say anything. For a long time, my mom looked at everything in the store. My father still didn't say anything. She finally asked my father if he wanted to read some of her poetry. And he was a little worried that he might not like her poetry, and he didn't want to offend her, but he agreed to read one of her poems. And he was very impressed and wound up reading all of her poetry. And I'm happy to say that they were together from that very first day they met. It's a beautiful story. And they were happily married until my mother passed just a couple years ago. I like to think of myself as a fundamentally peaceful, gentle person. But when I'm playing guitar, I have an electric, passionate side as well, and I think I have both elements within myself. As a musician, as a young child studying an instrument, being able to have an emotional relationship and experience with my guitar and with my music, I think really was meaningful. I could appreciate at a very young age that if I felt great, if I felt terrible, if I felt angry, whatever I was experiencing, I could channel that in a way, that was creative or in a way that was therapeutic, in a way that felt very personal. And I also had a sense of justice. And even though I was only learning how to play guitar and just discovering music, I knew at a very young age what it was that I wanted to express as a musician. You know, just something about dignity, about respect, you know, about harmony, you know, about something positive, you know, above and beyond just being an entertainer, you know. And all those experiences, in addition to my parents being artists, you know, led me on my path as a musician, where I really wanted to be, you know, a conduit for something original, you know, something that felt unique to me, even though I wanted to express something that was universal, like in my own singular way. So I had that sense at a young age, and I had an identity, even though I was kind of became shy and reserved and quiet in a way that I hadn't been. I had the sense of what I wanted to be and what I could become. My talent is in music. You know, that's something I got from my mother, who played guitar, and some of my earliest memories are of her playing and singing and really sparking my imagination, you know, as to what can be shared and expressed and conveyed through music and through guitar. The school where I went to college, Bennington, in Bennington, Vermont, they had a black music division as well as a music division, which was kind of radical in its own way. And the music building was the Paul Robeson House. I had never heard of Paul Robeson. But since then, he's become one of my great heroes and inspirations. And I've actually lectured kids in the public schools about the life and legacy of Paul Robeson. And, you know, in my work in summer camps, I've talked about not only Paul Robeson, but other musicians who have used their music to champion social justice. You know, I mean, Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger and Harry Belafonte and Miriam Makeba, and, you know, there's a legacy, you know, of musicians who have, you know, made sacrifice and effort to do more than just entertain, but, you know, use their music and their art to, you know, stand on principle and integrity and try to make a difference in the world, you know, as artists.
During the pandemic, I moved to Manhattan Plaza just before like a week before everything closed up. We weren't allowed. We were on pretty much lockdown. But because I was in this wonderful complex with all these different people in the entertainment business, there was entertainment here. There were times I would go out on the second floor terrace, and sometimes there would be musicians out there. I remember once we went out there and it was this jazz group playing. And a lot of it was just so wonderful. People would come out and they would hear the jazz musicians play. And these were all mostly musicians who lived right here in this complex. And then a couple of times, a symphony orchestra would come and sit on the terrace. And it would be for those of us who lived here. And it was so soothing and so wonderful to hear this live music during this time when you couldn't go out. There was no place to go to, really. And that's basically what was happening to make it more comfortable for those of us who lived here. It was very cool. We all grew up very musical. My father even had me and I have siblings. I have 2 sisters and a brother. And my father would organize us as a little singing group, and we'd sing together, and he'd play the piano. And then there were also folk songs, and I wanted to learn to play guitar. I remember begging my parents for a guitar. So I finally got one when I was 15, and I already could play the piano. I started taking piano lessons when I was about 8. So I knew music. And my mother got me a book so I could teach myself how to play the guitar. I didn't really formally take any guitar lessons, but I wanted to play the guitar because, well, I wanted to do protest songs, but also because it was easy to carry around. Because all I knew at the time was the piano, and I used to make up songs and stuff on the piano. And when I had a guitar, I knew I could go places with the guitar, which I did. And I made up songs, I made up poems, which I set to music. Was an exchange student. I lived in the Netherlands for a year. And I bought a guitar when I was there because I also found that music, if I sang, even if I was singing in English, people would gravitate to me. I would meet people that way because I think of myself as being shy, not that much of an introvert, but shy. And I could play the piano and sing songs, and I could play the guitar and sing songs. And the Dutch were absolutely fascinated. What I really learned from it is that people are people. And you deal with people as who they are and not make any preconceived ideas of people. I call people on that when they do that. I do say, well, what if it was this? Or what if they were this? To make people think again about different kinds of people. Because I've always believed that people all want the same things. We all want to have friendship. We all want to be entertained. We want to be liked. And I think music is also a big part of that. Because music is a coming together.
I am an artist. I do bird carvings and sculpture and things like that. And I've found through time that music played like in headphones or in earbuds or something like that, at the same time that I am doing my art and my carving and stuff, it calms me down. It makes me concentrate on what I do. I'm also ADD, and I also have depression. I'm being treated for depression. It also helps handle those things. When I get depressed or when I get down or get anxious, I'll put some music on, and it just calms me down. It's kind of like Prozac with earphones.
The barbershop has been just a wonderful way of keeping my sanity in a crazy world. Singing is a lifetime avocation, and I've been singing barbershop for 25 years. And if I go to practice with a headache, I don't have a headache after 30 minutes. I feel so much better being with other people and singing and making music. It's wonderful.
Where I really start with this and relationship with music comes from practically infancy, or like being a toddler, because I grew up always wanting to be entertaining, and my mother regularly references when I was a kid doing things like singing the Pepsi commercial songs and doing impressions of Sammy Davis Jr. It's funny how 70s and 80s, the technology was so different. The 80s, the Walkman came along and suddenly music can become very personal. But growing up, there was one radio in the car, and so music was communal. And the experience of riding in a car and everybody listening to the same music and understanding and having that many influences everywhere was integral to who I was. And for some crazy reason, I was a sponge. And so all of that soaked in. It does heal and it does expand. And it also unites. The times when I could really be myself the most was when I was curating my own music. And then I cannot leave out like gospel music, of course, because it's hard to be a rural black kid and not grow up in the church and not sing with choirs at church and doing all of that. Those songs and that ability to curate and to create my own playlists that speak to me in very different ways and hit me emotionally, those are the times when even though I would sometimes feel like I was on the outside, it was fulfilling me inside, and it was helping me to grow and identify and to feel and to manifest. I kind of felt inside and outside at the same time because I didn't embody all of the culture, but it was just enough that would get me through and to feel like things are going to be okay. And I don't know if music was a survival tactic or if it was a unifier. And the fact is, two things can be true at the same time. Maybe I suppose it was both. As I think about things where the original prompt was the healing power of music, and I've talked a lot about the influence that music has had on me developing where my personality is and the things that have become important to me and my ability to be almost encyclopedic when my lectures in class to talk about musical theater history and to talk about all of those things. But the thing that I have not really spoken much about to the degree that I would like is how music also helps to create community. I have been directing a production, and the first night of rehearsal, when our music director sat down and we had done a read-through of the first act of the show, and the music director had turned things over to her, and she started playing a song on the piano, and the whole cast just kind of fell in, and they found they sang in 3 and 4 part harmony on this particular gospel song. And by the end of it, we felt this emotional and spiritual connection, because even people that did not know the song picked it up and ran with it. And the beauty of that moment cemented these 23 disparate people into one community in a 4-minute song. And there is nothing more healing than feeling like you belong to something that's bigger than you. We walk around a lot feeling disconnected, sometimes feeling hopeless, sometimes feeling even a little crazy, if you will. But that connection that we all crave can come from music. It comes from something that has reached across time for far, far longer than any of us have been on this earth. And that's where I feel the healing comes from, because it comes from something that is beyond the right now and reaches back across time and then propels us forward through time with this. I remember this one afternoon, because Mom, they had induced a coma, and so she was on this propofol, and she still wasn't healing the way she needed to, so they kept her in a coma constantly. And I remember this one afternoon in rehearsal, the kids were rotten. Oh my gosh. They were just unfocused, and they were rude, and they were talking. And I remember I was like, y'all, my mother is in the hospital dying right now, and y'all are here, pardon the language, just being assholes. And it makes me wonder, why am I here instead of there with her? And after the rehearsal, the young lady who was playing Celie Keston came up to me with a couple of other cast members. They said, "We want to pray for your mom." And we stood in a circle in this public school, 5 of us, and Keston prayed, and then she sang. And we all hugged. And then I stopped at the hospital on the way home because, I was headed home because I was going to go home and take a nap and then come back at 11 like usual. And the crazy thing was, that was the exact day when they turned off the propofol and Mom woke up and she was finally responsive. That was a moment that was not in the movie, and nobody really knew what I was going through and the fight that I was in and the emotional journey. But I know that song and that prayer, it reached the ears that it needed to hear. So, yeah.
Do you ever get the feeling that living in your family feels like a small outpatient mental health facility? If so, play a lot of music. It will help. One such unique family, the Bunches, provides a window to understanding that experience. Mary Emma Riddle and Andre Bunch met on tour in the early 1900s during the days of vaudeville. Mary Emma was a 16-year-old chaperoned, toe-tapping ballerina, and Andre was an experimental, bluesy cello player, unique for his time. Because Andre was 22, they kept their relationship a secret. In addition, she was from a well-to-do New York family, and his background was a bit murky, including some potentially problematic multicultural genetics. It was love at first sight. As time passed, they discovered they were both descendants of a little-known southern U.S. Melungeon clan. It was more of a secret in Mary Emma's family than in Andre's, but it wasn't talked about in either family. The Melungeons lived deep in the woods, hidden from view due to racist attitudes toward their ancestral mix of Cherokee Indian, European, Hispanic, Scotch-Irish, African American, and white people who had roots all over the earth. They had made it to the American South and eventually migrated throughout America. Andre wooed Mary Emma with recordings of her favorite music and lotus plants in muddy bowls. She was interested in the lotus's metaphysical, mythological, and healing history. When she turned 20 and Andre was 26, they got married with their family's blessings. They waited until their 30s to have children so they could continue to travel in their work. Then they had twins. They named their son Fiedler, long I, to honor Andre's cello playing, and called daughter Tadpole to honor Mary Emma's strong, nimble legs, and because of Frog's unique vocal sounds. They joked that their twins were fiddling frogs. They called Tadpole Tad so she wouldn't get teased by other children. And Fiedler was a good name for their son because he developed a love for playing the oud at a young age. He took it everywhere, even into bathrooms to prevent it being stolen. In elementary school, Tad and Fiedler formed a duo and entertained at parties. Fiedler's experimental oud playing accompanied Tad's unique singing style, which included frog-like sounds. Fiedler also played a rare mix of classical and blues, like Andre, which complemented Tad's 3-octave vocal stylings of a cross-cultural mix. It was the family's way of honoring their Melungeon ancestry. Their home was filled with love, laughter, intense discussions about everything, and a lot of yelling. Many composers, musicians, and visual artists congregated at their New York home. No one ever thought of the Bunch Riddle family as boring. Because Mary Emma and Andre didn't want to be away from the twins, they advanced their education and got staff jobs in the arts. It allowed them to create a home life for the family. The neighbors got used to their eccentricities. The kids were good students, and their goal was to study music and become small-town troubadours, eventually creating a team of musicians called Healing Co-Responders. They understood the healing power of music. The Red Lion Inn, with its Lion's Den evening music, are an amalgam of past and present. Light jazz plays quietly in the inn's main areas. The almost subliminal music creates a calming effect the moment you walk inside. The staff and guests walk around with smiles and exude a peaceful attitude. They are part of the amazing vortex in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, which draws people from all over the earth to bathe in the area's healing music frequencies. Many of the area's residents are involved in businesses and the visual arts, as well as their passion for music.
Fit right in. I was as comfortable as as could be, becoming part of the Boston Symphony family, and in particular very close to the maestro Seiji Ozawa and the board of trustees, whose names you read in history books, and all the musicians and the stage crew and everybody. I became part of that family in 1978. That's when my professional relationship began with the Boston Symphony Orchestra. And I went all over the world with the BSO and its maestro, who was one of the most influential conductors of the 20th century. Certainly, I would say the most influential conductor of his generation, Seiji Ozawa. Yo-Yo Ma said to me years ago, Seiji opened the door for all of us Asian musicians, is what he was referring to. Seiji was the first Asian musician who was a superstar internationally in Western music. Before that, there was nobody like him. He was also the most charismatic, most hip, most fun, and one of the most musically talented people I've ever known. And for a photographer, he was also the most photogenic person on the planet. And so I photographed Seiji in more than 50 concert halls on four continents across 20 years, Asia, America, Europe, South America. And I published my first book. Houghton Mifflin published it in 1998, Seiji, An Intimate Portrait of Seiji Ozawa. If it wasn't for Seiji, I would never have learned and grown to love classical music, which was the soundtrack of my parents' home. I didn't connect with it at all. I liked rock and roll. I liked the blues. I like Louis Armstrong, but I can't say I like jazz. And when I walked into Symphony Hall and saw Seiji Ozawa with the Boston Symphony Orchestra, which is the way you're supposed to listen to this music, with all due respect to my friends in the recording industry, that's a facsimile of the real deal. And when you are in the room where the music is made, because orchestral music is an acoustical form. It's not like rock and roll that is meant to go through electronics, speakers, and so forth. It changes everything. You know, hearing it on the radio and hearing it live, two different things. And Seiji was beyond cool. And so I became part of that initially just because I had a picture of Tanglewood that I showed the BSO, and subsequently because I thought it was a prestigious client. Indeed it was. I was busy with good clients in Boston, and none of them cared about any of my other clients except the Boston Symphony, and I was frequently introduced as Seiji's photographer or the BSO's photographer. The managing director of the Boston Symphony Orchestra wrote that I was the honorary 102nd member of the orchestra. The great German conductor, frequent guest conductor in Boston, Kurt Masur, called me the principal guest photographer of the Boston Symphony Orchestra. And the head of the Players Committee, which is like the union steward, said, Lincoln's just one of us. And I had carte blanche in that place, and I had enough work so that I could come and go whenever I chose and flesh out the assignments that I had with my own work. Fully a third of the pictures in my book, Seiji, An Intimate Portrait of Seiji Ozawa, I know for a fact I made on my own time. There are many pictures in the book that I can't be sure. And I'm very proud to say that John Williams, the other great musician of Symphony Hall in those days, wrote the introduction to that book, and another dozen and a half luminaries, including Yo-Yo Ma and Steven Spielberg, wrote short pieces for that book, and it's a great piece of history. And Along the way, I developed what John or somebody called big ears. I learned to hear the differences between different instruments, different performances, different seats, different conductors, different halls. I really worked hard trying to hear the differences that initially I couldn't hear. It all sounded the same to me.
I will tell you that music has always been so important to me. You know, I grew up in a house where we played records and 8-tracks, and I always knew, although I never had like a musical ability, but I knew that I loved music, like needed it while I worked, needed it while I wrote, and I think that the time that it kind of saved me the most, or was my Hail Mary, really, was when I was pregnant, and my dream, really my whole life, and certainly my entire pregnancy, was to have a home birth. And as I was pregnant, I had, a great pregnancy until my midwife, who was going to be at my side during my home birth, said, she's breech. And I lived in Florida at the time, and I knew right away what that meant. A midwife can't attend a birth at home if the child is breech. It presents too much of a risk. So I would have to have her in a hospital, which would mean in the OR, a cesarean section. So I just immediately said, I need to use music. I need to try to get her to turn around, get in the right position, so that I can do this thing that I desperately want to do, and that I felt like was just the only way to do birth, for me. So my grandmother was a huge Elvis fan, and I was raised on Elvis, so I immediately started playing Love Me Tender. I mean, so often, Every single time I was alone with my baby, she was still in utero, but I would play it at the top of my belly, because of course she was breech, she wasn't head down, and I would play it at the bottom, away from, I'd start it at the top and I'd kind of move it down, thinking maybe she'll follow it, and it didn't even take 3 weeks, which my midwife was so impressed with, because it's hard to get a baby to turn around. There's different maneuvers that can be done. There's chiropractic care, which I also used. But the thing that was really remarkable to me, of course, I got to have the most beautiful home birth. But every time I would play that song, Love Me Tender, no matter, how, upset my daughter was as a baby, has trouble sleeping, there was a total change in the room, in her. She recognized that music. I feel it connected us. When I just would look into her eyes as she heard it, there was just, and I wasn't the only one who noticed. I remember one time my sister came, and she was with her alone for the first time I went to work. And she's like, my daughter has a different personality than her children, so she didn't really know how to handle my daughter's upset. And I said, play Love Me Tender. She was like, I cannot believe the change in her when this music comes on. And I feel, like there's something just super special about that song, and super special about my daughter and I's connection to music now. I think that's the biggest credit. That's the biggest thing that it did, was connect us in a meaningful way. Even before she was here, she's now inherited this deep love of music, and she did her 6th grade science project on the cognitive benefits of music. And her teacher, who's been a teacher for 35 years, said, no one in all my years of doing the science fair has ever chosen that topic. And, she had to talk about why she picked it. And she just said, because my mom and I love music, and we know what it can do. And she didn't tell the story of how I turned her around, but she did grow up knowing that, So, I can't say much more than that really saved me and changed me.
Music has always been a very large part of my life from the earliest beginnings up until now. When I was a kid, I remember having my 45s and how important they were to me, and the music that came out and what it inspired me to think about. And it became such a part of my life that I wanted to do as much with music as I possibly could. Started playing instruments when I was young. Started with the trumpet, moved on to the keyboard, which was my favorite because I could just play the keyboard at any point in time and express myself and get my emotions out. And I think music has that ability to help people conquer things in their lives and help them deal with happy times, sad times, whatever the case may be in the middle. Piano was always super important to me because I discovered maybe in my college years that if you play just the black keys, they sound pretty much great no matter what you play. And if you're in a good mood, you could play them soft and gentle and they become relaxing and meditative. If you're in an angry mood, you can play them hard and strong and they will just help you release that inner feeling of angst. And by the time you're done with that piece, you can get completely lost in it, and then you're walking out feeling whole, feeling healed, feel put back together, if you will. Because I think every type of music fits a different part of your life, a part of your emotion. So, I use different music for different feelings and to help me get through different situations throughout life. When I went into the Peace Corps, obviously I couldn't take my piano with me, so I bought a guitar and I taught myself how to play the guitar, and I used to use it in my lessons because I thought it was a great way to bridge the cultural differences between America and Armenia and ways to teach the English language through music, which, my first thing was teaching a bunch of young elementary school kids, I'm a Little Teapot, to using my music in a college setting to create different songs that taught about grammar structure and whatnot. Because again, you're thousands and thousands of miles away from family and feel homesick, and are you going to be able to push through this? And because being in the Peace Corps is of itself an extremely big challenge because you're dealing with different cultures, different environments, different food, all that sort of stuff. And music was the one thing that just kind of got me through the whole thing. And then especially when I started playing with a band, it was just everything. And I never wanted to leave. I could have stayed there forever in that particular spot. Every musical moment is tied to something in our lives. You can hear a song and instantly be brought back to high school, or be instantly brought back to college and this particular moment in your life and how amazing it was. Or you hear this song and you go, oh, every time I broke up with somebody, I'd play this song and I'd cry and cry and I'd listen to it 500 times, so much that I wore out the record. So that's what really kind of brought me into making this record store thing come to life. And then I bought an existing record store, which was really nice because then I didn't have to focus too much on, the building it from the ground up. It's pretty established, so had some clientele. And my favorite thing about the record store is the youth. When they come in here and they amaze me by knowing various artists, like 10-year-olds that know about Jimi Hendrix or Maynard Ferguson or some of these incredible artists, and they know about them, and then they come in and we talk about why and what emotions do they feel when they hear this music, and who else is like this, and help them go from Jimi Hendrix to the Rolling Stones to Crosby, Stills and Nash and Leo Cody, and how their music influences different people and the different emotions that you can have with that is really kind of what drove me to do this, and I love absolutely every second of it. I come in here, I keep telling people I work in the past, because everything I do here is, it's older music. It's 60s, it's 70s, it's 80s, it's 90s. But it's just fascinating for me, and I get to come to a place every day, no matter what my mood is. I put on an album because I listen to music all day long when I'm here, and that music transforms me and helps my day turn from whatever problem I had before to helping it move on to a much better, peaceful, happy place in my life. And that's what I like.
I'm from Grenada. My family is from Grenada. The first time that I ever felt like music touched me was when I was 13. Allowed it? Okay. When I was 13, I discovered punk music for the first time, like Paramore and Evanescence and all this stuff that I never heard ever in my life. I'm Caribbean. I grew up Caribbean. So a lot of the time I would be listening to like steel pan music and it's all happy and da-da-da-da. But I had just come into myself and like came into realizing that I felt alone. I felt really, really alone in a way that I wasn't able to communicate to people around me. And then I had become friends with one of my classmates, and I had listened to one of her songs through her earphones at the time. And I said, I need to know what this is. So I went on YouTube and I typed in, I think the first band was Paramore. I typed it in, and it was like everything that I was feeling was summed up into like one genre of music that I had never heard before. So I sat there for like hours and days learning the songs that now, even if they turn on to this day, I still know all the lyrics. It's insane. I didn't realize until like now how much that really impacted me, because if I didn't have that type of music and I didn't get a chance or had the ability to learn, I would have never come into who I am now today. I just look back. Anytime I listen to like that type of music, it feels like a capsule, like a time capsule, and it makes me realize how much I've grown and how much confidence I've gotten into myself and how much I've grown into who I am and how much more comfortable I am in being loud and taking up space and bringing joy. I think that's what it is. The joy that I felt like I didn't have is what I feel like I now have to give back.
We are music. It's in our soul. Since time began, the universe calls. Countless frequencies out in space, on the earth, forever dancing in the light. The healing power of music, universal power of light and rhythm. Our heartbeat is the source, our rhythmic history. A lightness of being across the seas unites us all. Many become one. In and out of time, music is the soundtrack of our lives. Ancient instruments heal through millennia. Flutes, bells, gongs, drums, oud, soothe, savage beast. Instruments carved at a time call to us and enlighten our journey. Let their timeless sounds heal us now, as in lives long gone by. Their healing power never wavers. We are music. It's in our soul. Feel the ancient rhythms. Hear the tune of eternity. Composers and musicians create from what's inside. Allow it to confront what's outside. They reach inside, see themselves within a flow of truth, experience what life offers, sometimes feels no choice because their creativity burns deep inside. Music, song, yearning for life reminds us of music's healing power, its ability to find new ways of seeing life. Soundtracks of our lives. Musical artists taking part in their process and the results, living forever and beyond.